Hi, fabulous tarot cartomancy nerds. I want to just share with you something really quick, which is this awesome set of markers that I found. If you follow me on Instagram, which is under my real name, not my YouTube name, or my tarot name, you will have seen these already, potentially. I am gagged. I think they're amazing. So here's what I'm going to show you. I found these the other day, and I wasn't expecting to use them on cards. I was sort of hoping they would work. But these are Boink Spectrum Sparkle Glitter Brush Pens. And they come in sets of 3. The 3 that I got were onyx, silver, and gold. And I went to Michael's to actually get a deck to edge, or I should say a marker to edge the edges, the sides of the new edition of the Darkness of Light, which I got because I have 0 willpower. And I do have to say I prefer this to the original version, although I was a fan of the original version. The only issue there was that I don't really use it that much, but maybe now I will. So I saw these a few weeks ago, actually. Again, this is the box. I'll just leave it out while I yammer. I saw these a few weeks ago and I thought, oh, that sounds really cool. And I'm definitely like a baby with shiny things. You know, I definitely prefer a little shimmer in life, because why not? But I thought, I don't know, it looks like a brush pen. I couldn't tell. You know, when you go to Michael's or wherever, usually they have those little cubbies where you can see, you know, like they'll just have a single marker. So this was the marker I thought I was going to use. It's just like a Tombow brush marker. And you can see everyone uses these. I prefer them to Sharpies, actually, for edging decks now, because they do not smell like Sharpies, which I don't like. So, but these were on sale. And I said, screw it. Let's see. So I took them home and I said, well, I'll just experiment with them on something. But I didn't think I was going to use them on the Darkness of Light, although I thought it would be cool because I was like, oh, there's a black sparkly marker and the Darkness of Light. You know what I mean? There's this interplay of dark and light that I thought was cool. So I said, I was just sitting at my desk and I said, what the hey, I'll try it on the artist cards. And I did, and I was surprised, A, by how well the edge of the card took the pen, how easily any excess wiped off of the back or the front, and how good it looked when I did the first 2. So I decided to take the gamble and do the whole deck, and I loved the way it looked. So I'll actually stand. It's not, how do I do this? Let me pull the light forward a skosh. It's not gonna sort of look, excuse me, as good on camera as it looks in real life. It looks really good in real life. It reminds me of sort of that beautiful gossamer that gets left behind by those I can't remember what insect does that, but it looks so good. And the deck itself looks great. And it didn't do any damage to the deck. It didn't get on the front. It didn't get on the back. It didn't affect the edges. You know, it shuffles as good as it always has. The one thing I will say is that I wish I had edged it in the Tombow, the black marker first, and then done this, because the coverage is a little inconsistent, because it's a literal brush. But I really like the way, and again, it really does look better in person than it looks here. But it's still, you know, you still get a sense of how cool it looks, especially for a deck that's called the Darkness of Light, which to me, you know, in the video, at least through the camera lens, it looks a little wet. You know, it sort of looks like it's been wet, or sort of, that's maybe a little more how it looks in reality, you know what I mean? But it just is super duper cool. So I did that deck and was really gagged on it, and then so I decided to do my 8 coins, which I had already edged in gray. And again, this looks a little bit better in real life than it does in the video, but or at least the viewfinder. But again, I had already edged this, and I thought, this is a deck that I actually am using a lot more than I expected to. And again, it just looks really super cool. Now this is one I trimmed, so it's a little harder to see how the light plays on it because it's not as perfect as the other one, but in terms of trimming. So that was the onyx color. And so I've been doing the gold color on my Baleen Oracle. And again, let's see. Maybe if I zoom, boink, and I focus on it. Brighten up a little bit. Again, this looks a little better. It looks a lot better, actually, in real life. Sorry, I'm trying to make this look as sexy as it does. It looks sort of a lot more like gilding, and it just plays on the light in a real beautiful way. That's my Baleen, Oracle Baleen. And I'm not done yet, so I just thought I would sort of show you the marker. And so basically they come with this yellow ring, which is what protects the brush tip from breaking the seal, essentially, that keeps the paint from going in. So you unscrew this, you take that off, and then you put this back on, and it punctures the seal, and the paint flows in, and it's a little bit like a push, it's like a squeeze bottle, and you force the ink into the reservoir. And then you get the brush, and you can hear it when you, I don't know if you can hear that, but there are little sort of baubles in there that, excuse me, will keep it fresh and keep it liquid and lucid. And you do from time to time have to sort of squeeze the little, it actually says push on it, you know what I mean? So you kind of, you just do the thing, and then I find that depending on the cardstock so far, where on the pen you sort of choose to place the brush depends, but it's very forgiving, I have to say. And with a lot of anything that has even a slight gloss to it, the cardstock rejects this very watery ink, so you can just grab a paper towel and squish it along, and it dries really fast. So with both of the decks and the one that I'm doing now that I edged already, I didn't have to wait super long. I just checked to make sure that there wasn't any excess on the front or back, and then plopped it right on the pile. So that, it's really simple, and in terms of it being a brush, it's actually really well behaved, which I think is nice, because I'm not the most, like, I don't know what the word is. I'm not a great, like, I don't know what the word, I get messy, I guess is my point. The one thing I'll say, and I learned this with the black marker, is if you can see, it actually is a little frayed, and that's not from the edging of the cards. Actually, one of the things to be aware of is, so I edged the entire Darkness of Light last night, and then, finished it and put the cover back on. And when I did, I think I crushed, a handful of the bristles, and it splayed out. And that actually didn't happen from edging the cards. It happened because I wasn't super careful, and I think I jammed the cover on because I was like, yay, I'm done. And I ended up cutting off a few of the splayed bristles, but the damage to the brush tip actually doesn't come from edging the cards. It comes from just not being thoughtful about putting the cap back on right. So the other thing I will say is that if you are doing this on a fresh edge, meaning that you haven't edged it in something already, you do want to go a little bit slow, because the cardstock will absorb the ink a little bit more slowly, and you sort of want it to, but if you go too fast, you are going to have to go back, and you'll notice a lot of skipping and a lot of need for touch-ups. And And that was the thing about the darkness of light. I'll show you in a second. Let me just finish this card. Was that I noticed today when I went to look at it this morning after edging it last night, was that I really needed to go and do a lot of touch-ups. And in fact, I probably could have stood to do a whole, you know, a whole second coat, so to speak, on these cards. Because they do, you know, there still are. So I feel there still are some white spots. And this cardstock is really odd. You know, the corners especially were hard to get. The way that the cardstock itself is absorbent in a good way, but the way that the cardstock is cut kind of prevents it in some places. Sort of the middle here and the corners definitely I had to go back and do. And if you're looking really close, you can see that it probably could use another coat. Maybe I'll do it. I actually don't, you know, I don't try to get edgings perfect because I like a deck to look used. I think, you know, it's to me like a deck that looks like it has a few miles on it, to me is kind of classy. You know, I don't want all my decks to look pristine and new. Some of them that cost a lot of money, I guess, I don't want to have wear and tear on just because I don't want to buy another copy of them. But, you know, I'm really, for example, afraid to do any kind of edging to the two Baba Studio decks I have because they were both expensive and hard to replace. Especially once they sell out. I'm not sure what the status is, you know, on their availability, but I think the Bohemian Gothic is becoming increasingly hard to find, and once the new Victorian Romantic sells out, I feel like, from what I understand, that's its last printing. Although this deck is a deck that's not easy to get in the United States. I had to get it on eBay, and happily it did have a couple extra cards in it, the Boleyn. So I would recommend, if you're going to use these, definitely use them on, or test it on extra cards. I feel like all modern decks should come with extra cards these days so that you can check, you know, whether anything you're going to do to it is going to harm it. Yeah, these markers I think are pretty rad. And they come in more colors than just these three. So they do come in a box of 3. So far in the craft store, I could not find them individually. But there were sets of 3 in different colors. And I may get more. You know, I don't modify all my decks, I have to say. I will often edge a deck that, you know, like these two. The 8 coins I'd already edged in gray because the back is kind of a charcoal. When you see it on camera, excuse me, when you see it on camera, it looks black, but it's actually not. It's a very dark gray with like a darker gray pattern on it of roses. So I edged it in gray and then used the black onyx to give it a little sheen there. But, you know, something like this where it is really sort of a true black on the back. Actually, this is a little kind of gray too. You know, it can look unfinished. You know, so I'll edge decks in that case. Or if it's a particularly thick deck, here, this is the Margareta Peterson. This is the German version, which I edged. This I did with these I learned about from Katie Flowers' channel, and I've only used the gold one, but these are ink pads, and actually I preferred the ink pad weirdly to the gold Sharpie. This cardstock is really, there are parts of it that really repel, and there are parts of it that really attract ink. So this could probably stand a second go around too. But the thing about this deck, and the reason I chose to do it, was that the cardstock is actually so thick that the raw edges looked a little, I don't know what the word is, it just looks a little sort of cheap. But the deck itself is not. This is the German version, which I wrote the titles on. And this is one of my decks for this month. And I didn't go and do a second coat, and I probably could have, but you know, I've had this deck for almost 20 years, and I sort of wanted it to look like it's been used. But other decks I don't, you know, my Japaridza over there, which I'm using a lot this month, I haven't edged, and, you know, so I don't do every deck. But a dark one, certainly I do, and this one, the Boleyn Oracle, and who knows how far I'll get in using this one. and experimenting with it. I've got so many systems. You know, if you watch my channel, you know I've talked about Lenormand a lot and my struggle with it. And you may even know my love affair with Sibylla. But I also have Kipper, and I did a review of the great deck and book by Tony Poole at The Card Geek. So there's the Kipper system that I still need to learn. I ordered on eBay a copy of the Desta Oracle system, and I think the Greek version, and I've looked at it, but I haven't done much of anything with it, other than kind of download a few, I think of Kelly's sheets, workshop, worksheet, I don't know, handout, sort of reference sheets, that's the word I'm looking for. So I've got that, and now this is a whole system, and you know, the guidebook itself sort of suggests that there aren't really any rules, and you follow it the way you follow it, but there are associations with this that are at least interesting to explore with the Boolean. I did do a walkthrough of this whole deck, and I talked about the guidebook. You know, the things that I didn't talk about in there is that there are planetary associations to the categories. There's this blue-faced card that, you know, you can use, and there's significator cards. And the other thing, of course, is just sort of translating it. So all the titles are in French, and a handful of them are cognates to English. So it's not, you know, it's not difficult to understand, but many of them are not, you know, and it's also interesting just to sort of understand the context. So I haven't decided how deep to go into sort of learning this deck as the system it was designed to be. But I do like to have a foundation in tradition, and I apologize for not knowing who, but at least one person in my walkthrough of this deck, in my chat about it, commented, you know, that there are some online resources that can be translated through Google Translate. Honestly, what made me want this deck is that it's very common. Whoops, see, that's the thing you don't want to do. What I just did was I yanked the cover on it, and I didn't get it right in there. This is a deck that people learn, you know, as French cartomancers, like, early on. And that was interesting to me, just because my background, my, you know, heritage is French. You know, if you follow me on Instagram, my last name, Jolivet, is very, very French. Not so much in the United States, although you hear it a lot in Louisiana and in Canada, you know what I mean? So we have like a French-Canadian connection there, but, you know, so I'm interested in anything that has a connection to France, because where I grew up, at one point in time, had a really sort of high French population, but that's kind of gone with the wind. And so I didn't grow up with a lot of sense of my French heritage and background and whatnot. So I do, you know, I'm always drawn to and interested in things that are French. So, and I think I said this in the video. Oh, here's that blue card. You know, that Lenormand is really German. Mademoiselle Lenormand, who it's, I think it's got something here. Mademoiselle Lenormand, who it's named for, likely never used the cards. You know, and so it's not really a French system, although there are French interpretations and iterations over the years. You know, it really is, it comes from the German game of hope, which in turn comes from some coffee grounds games and cards. And so Lenormand isn't, you know, by nature French. It just sort of has a French name. So this is why I got that deck. This might deserve a second coat too. Gosh, I'm rambling. I also was going to say that when I saw walkthroughs of earlier versions of this deck, it did, the edges were gilded. So this is one time where I sort of felt like, oh, I kind of wanted to get closer to what I was expecting. I was surprised when I opened it up that it wasn't gilded. You know, and just from a purist perspective, some people, this does bother some people. This is a very yellow gold, I have to say. So this is a goldy gold. It sort of slides more into the red gold area. This gold that I used here is a very yellow gold. It sort of slips into the green zone. But again, you know what I mean? It's sort of like, it's better than the Sharpie, which I would have used. And it just kind of catches the light. So, and I haven't used the silver yet. I'm not sure what I'll use it on, because I don't have a lot of decks that require silver. I'll probably order another of these black onyx ones if I can get it as a single, because I did damage the brush. But I have to say, it did 2 full decks with several, you know, several touch-ups on both that really look good, you know. So there's also life to these. You know, you can sort of feel inside how much juice is left. So anyway, I can't even really. I'm such a nerd. I'm also kind of exhausted. I don't know if you can tell, but. So here's the 3 decks together, looking kind of disco-tastic. The gold, but all of these are fairly subtle in real life. The gold in the video is actually not showing a lot of its sheen, but you can see it just as much as the other 3. I think the cardstock has a lot of effect on it in the camera, but anyway, that is a little look at these decks edged in the, in the Spectrum Noir. This is, I don't know if the name of the set is Spectrum Noir or if each set is something different, but it's the Spectrum Sparkle brush pens that I got on sale for, I think, $13 at Michael's. And I think they're perfect for edging decks. So I hope this was interesting. I hope I was able to enable any tarot spenders out there, because, you know, that's what we do. And have a good night. Be good.